Welcome. My name is Maurice Smith, and I'm the Director of the Office of Consumer Services at the Public Service Commission. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to visit us and listen to this webinar we're going to have about DC Power Connect. It's a new website, and we're going to also talk a little bit about retail choice. Next slide. So DC Power Connect, this is a site that we will hope will be a valuable tool for consumers in navigating the competitive supplier landscape. It debuted on June 30. It's available on our website right now. And we're going to talk about that as well as the retail choice. Next slide, please. So what is retail choice? Retail choice is a program that allows consumers to buy electricity from a variety of suppliers. Today in the market, we have about 14% of the suppliers occupy the market where people can get their electricity from a competitive supplier. Retail choice encourages competition and innovative product offerings, which can lead to lower prices. Next slide. So what is retail choice? There's some key terms you need to know. Competitive supplier, obviously, generation, which is also your supply. That's the actual power supply electricity. Transmission is moving it from one location to another after it's been generated. And then there's distribution, which is the actual delivery to your home. On this diagram here, this map, you see the power plant. That's where the power is produced. That's the generation aspect of it. If you move to the right along that the diagram, you see transmission, which where you're driving along the highways, you see these large transmission lines. That's where the electricity is actually moving from one location to another to the final phase of that, which is distribution, where it's brought into your homes for your consumption. Standard offer service, that is the term that's used for the supply component of your electricity that is bought and provided by you by the local distribution company, PEPCO. So when you sign up for electricity service with PEPCO, the default is standard offer service. And that customers who choose to allow PEPCO to buy their electricity for them are on this service, and they do not choose a competitive supplier. Next slide. So retail choice, there's a little history behind it, how we got where we are. Most electricity and gas companies were typically vertically integrated. So they not only produced the electricity in their plants, they transmitted it, and then they distributed it. So they had all three of the terms that we talked about were under the control of one entity. However, during the late 70s and the 80s, generation of power and the maintenance and the operation of power plants became kind of a different landscape than previously. Coal wasn't as attractive as it once was. Coal was pretty much the dominant source of electricity supply for many years. So power companies start building nuclear plants, which was thought to be the salvation of the future and that it was cleaner and so forth. But there was a little thing called a 3-mile nuclear accident in the late 70s in Pennsylvania, which really changed the landscape of nuclear, made it a lot more expensive. There are a lot more federal regulations surrounding it. So the production and the generation of power plants and the maintenance and the operation of them became very different, to the point that some utilities started looking for ways to get out of that business. Here in the district, PEPCO came before the council in the late 90s to try to authorize to where they would not be in the generation. They want to sell all of their power plants. The council authorized the Public Service Commission to consider an application by Pepco for approval to sell all of its plants. The commission authorized Pepco to sell 5 of its 7 plants, but not those located in DC. Eventually, Pepco got out of the generation business entirely in the district. They have no generation plants anymore. And then in 2000, the Public Service Commission allowed, as a result of the kind of those activities, allowed all residential and commercial customers to choose their electric generation and transmission supplier by January of 2001. So this was the beginning of the choice program in the District of Columbia, and this is where retail choice started. Next slide, please. So why would you choose, and many consumers do not choose, but why would you want to choose a competitive supplier to generate your electricity supply? Well, the price could be better. It could be competitive with the SOS rate. There's added value. Sometimes suppliers, they make offers, they bundle in services, or just like a Nest, a smart thermostat. So they add value to some of their offers. By choosing a supplier, most of them have a mix of fuel. These are green fuels, like solar, like wind, hydro. So if you're trying to be green in your fuel choices, a supplier may present an option for you as well. And then it also, you can help the district meet its climate policy goals. The District of Columbia is committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions 50% below 2006 levels by 2032 and 80% below 2006 levels by 2050. So by choosing a supplier, sometimes you can also help the district meet its environmental goals. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick example to show you how choice affects you on your bill. Now here we have a Pepco bill with standard offer service. It's standard offer service. If you look at the 2 lines above the dark black bar there, you can see the electric supplies charges, and that's from SOS. Again, this customer has decided to let Pepco purchase electricity for them in a generation. And then you have your distribution charge. The Pepco will always and will always remain the local distribution company. So you're always going to get a distribution component. Again, that's the cost of bringing that electricity into your homes from Pepco. Next slide. Now here's your delivery charges. These are the distribution charges that you will see on your bill. They're highlighted. All the components that go into the distribution charges are included in this highlighted box, and these are the charges that it takes to bring that electricity to your home. Next slide, please. And on this bill, and your supply charges, again, this is the generation component of your bill, the cost of generating that electricity. They're also highlighted here, but will be segregated on your bill, and will show the various components involved in those supply charges. Excuse me. Next slide, please. Now here's a Pepco bill with a competitive supplier. Again, here you see above the black box, you only have the 1 line, the distribution charges, and those are the charges from Pepco. Next slide. And again, these are the delivery charges broken down into its various components. These are the charges to bring the electricity into your home. Next slide. However, here this customer has a competitive supplier. In this case, it's cancellation. So those charges will be broken out under a separate section of your bill under electric supply. And this is not an SOS customer. That's the distinction that we make here. This is a customer that has chose a third-party supplier, and those charges will be separated on your bill as they are on your SOS bill. But again, it's with a competitive supplier. In most cases, you'll get all of this from whether you have a supplier or not. You'll get these in one bill from Pepco. They do most of the billing, even though some suppliers bill independently, but many suppliers, you'll find their charges on your Pepco bill, but just separated. Next slide, please. So how does choice affect you? One of the things that suppliers are competing with the local distribution company. So they will solicit you and they will try to encourage you through their offers to switch to them. Now, you'll be contacted by suppliers in a variety of methods. They may knock on your door in person, but these are the ways that you enter into contracts with them. So if they come to your house, you will actually, if you decide to switch with them, sign a written contract or a written intention of contract. Now, suppliers can only come to your homes between 9 a.m. and sunset. And most importantly, before you let anyone in your home, they should have some ID indicating who they're working for and what they are there to solicit you for. So you don't want to let a stranger in your house. Another way you can enter into a contract with a supplier is over the phone. You get the verbal consent. This is done between 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. In the evening. Now, in these cases, when you decided or made the decision that you want to switch to the supplier, there's what's called a third-party verification. Now, once you've told the supplier, yeah, you're ready to switch, they will call an outside entity to confirm that you indeed intend to switch, that you understand everything that's being presented to you, and so forth. And these third-party verifications are often important in those cases when there's some debate about whether a consumer rather intended to switch. So the third-party verification is a component over the phone. Now, you can also switch or sign up with a supplier through the internet. Suppliers have their own websites with their offers on them, where you can directly visit that supplier, and then you are provided with an electronic version of the actual contract right there on the website. So again, what if you decide that you make this deal, you say you're going to switch to a supplier, but then you decide that you don't want to do it? Well, you have 3 days from the date of, depending upon how you entered in your agreement with the supplier, to rescind that offer, to get out of it. Now, the 3 days are either from the signing of the contract by the customer, in case of an internet transaction, it's when the customer transmits electric acceptance of the contract, or in the case when a supplier, all these suppliers, at some point you should get an actual contract, whether it be electronic or paper contract. So the supplier is required to send you the contract in the US mail. So you have 3 days from the date that the contract is deposited in the US mail. Now, these guidelines, as well as a lot of others, are protections that are provided in the District of Columbia by the Consumer Bill of Rights. Next slide, please. Solicitation, and how does choice affect you? Let the buyer beware. We always tell consumers to be very careful, that you understand and know the terms of the offers that the supplier is presenting to you, no matter how it's presented. If it's in the mail, if it's over the phone, it's on the internet, you need to know. Usually if a deal just sounds too good to be true, it usually is, and you should be wary of such an offer. We have many suppliers out here that are, most of the suppliers have very legitimate business offers. And so, but you need to protect yourself. You always want to protect your personally identifiable information. So all you need to give to somebody is an account number and they can switch your account, maybe without your permission. So you need to protect that type of information. You really don't want to give anybody any kind of personal information. You never want to give a social security number or anything like that. It's not required, it's not necessary. Don't be rushed into a decision. Learn more and get help on DC Power Connect. The website will show you how to look at offers and kind of put in your information that you'd like to see in an offer, or you can always call the DC, the Office of Consumer Services at the DC Public Service Commission. Don't be harassed. You can always hang up the phone, tear up the sheet of paper, or escort the person out of your home. And again, you also want to be aware of utility scams. This is an area like many others in the utility sector and outside of it were scam artists. And they may not even be, they're not associated with the supplier, but they pretend to be. So visit our website at fightutiliscams.com. We have a wealth of information about utility scams and how you can protect yourself from those. Next slide, please. Key concepts in retail choice. The contract rate. You want to know whether the contract is fixed or it's variable. One thing about, and we'll get into these terms in a little bit more detail, but with a variable contract, basically it says that, well, if the price goes up, that may affect you, and conversely, if it goes down. So, you gotta kind of know, you have to know what the market conditions are. If you're not sophisticated about swings in the market regarding utility rates, you would want to try to get a contract that has as long a fixed term as you can. The variable shifts the risk to the consumer, and that's not a position you never necessarily want to be in. Slamming is just simply where somebody signs you up and switches your account without your permission. It's illegal by the Consumer Bill of Rights. There's a lot of, we get a lot of complaints regarding this. Usually we get it sorted out, but that's what slamming is. Deceptive marketing, that's just kind of the blue sky. I'll save you 50% off your rate. It's just like exaggeration of an offer or just deceiving. It's just like, well, something's not being disclosed, it's hidden. You want to be careful. And again, that's why you always want to reach out if you're not clear on the terms of an offer. Renewal terms, you want to know those when you enter into a contract with a supplier. You want to know how the contract renews. Some contracts or some offers renew automatically unless somebody says, no, I don't want to continue them. Some can't renew unless somebody affirmatively states that they want to continue the terms of the contract, but you don't want to be unawares of how a contract renews, because you may want to either get out of that contract when it terminates, or you may want to continue it. So you need to know how the contract renews, and that's required to be in the contract once they provide you with it. Termination, we see that consumers sometimes they get into a contract with a supplier, a competitive supplier, and then they want to get out of it. And this is past the rescission period. So for example, say you're in a one-year contract, and then 3 months into it, you're like, well, I don't like this. This isn't what I expected it to be, and I want to get out of it. Well, that's fine, but you need to be aware that you can be on the hook for what remains on that contract. So if utilities, when they enter into, I'm sorry, the suppliers, when they enter these offers and contracts with consumers, they have to go out and get that supply and they have to pay for it. So if a consumer gets out of a contract before it expires or it terminates, there may be charges on that consumer. So you need to know. And then another thing, we also see that, you can't necessarily, sometimes people want to say, I want out of this today. Well, that isn't always possible. You can get out of it in a reasonable amount of time, but there's cycles for the consumer to go back to the SOS or switch to another supplier, that it may not be immediate. So you need to kind of know what are the consequences of terminating the contract. Next slide, please. This is an example of what we're talking about with the fixed versus a variable rate. On the left-hand side, you see a 12-month contract. The consumer's usage or average usage is $100 a month. So for a 1-year contract, that's $1,200. On the right-hand side is an example of a variable contract, and where the offer was the first 3 months are free. We see things like this. But then after the 3rd month, you go on a variable rate. And in this case, and this is just an example, the rate or for the consumer's usage averages $200 a month. So for the 9 months that this consumer is on a variable rate, the total annual cost is $1,800. And this just kind of illustrates that you need to not have a sense of an offer and where it's going to lead you, especially if you're going to be on a variable rate. Next slide, please. So that's the kind of the overview of a retail choice. There's a lot to it, but I think we gave the basics. But now we want to talk about DC Power Connect. Again, this debuted on June 30th. It's on our website. You really, if you're interested in switching for whatever reason, I think this is a good place for a consumer to visit. There's a lot of information on there, and this is a tool to allow consumers to kind of shop for the type of offers that might be the best for them. Here's one of the pages, and this is give you an example of what consumers can do to kind of see what's available for them. And we're going to start on the left-hand side at the filters. So the first is your usage level. So you can look at most of your bills and determine, what your usage level averages a month, and you can insert that. Now here the consumer is 700 kilowatt hours a month. And then you can check any or all of these to try to figure out what you want in terms of the rate. You have the fixed rate, a variable rate, which we discussed, and the non-volumetric rate, which basically means that your charges won't be related to your usage. You indicate whether you're on the rate schedule, whether you're a residential or commercial user, and then the sliders, which are very good. You can slide these to what percent in terms of what percent renewables do you want from this contract. And then you have the length below that, and you go from 1 month to 36 months. And then you can also enter your desired price per kilowatt hour. Once you do that, hit the filter button, the green filter button. Then on the right side, you'll see the current offers in the market that meets those needs. So, and most importantly, it'll tell you the price per kilowatt hour and then how much you would be paying per month. So this is something that I think the consumers have kind of wanted in one place. and that the Public Service Commission has put together as a tool and a guide to help consumers kind of navigate the retail choice arena. So again, and it's not just that, there's a lot of information on this page. I invite everybody on this call to visit it, play around with it a little bit, and see how they like it. Next slide. So thank you. If there are any questions, I think we can enter them in the chat, and I'd be happy to answer them as best I can.
Hi, Maurice. This is Kelly. We do have a question in the chat. Sure. So our question is, does it matter if you live in a home or if you live in a condo building? In other words, does the whole condo building have to switch?
Well, no. It depends upon how your building is metered. If you are individually metered, and you get a bill from Pepco every month in your name, then you have the ability to switch. So the answer, if you live in a home or apartment, that goes for apartments as well as homes and condominiums.
We have a second question.
Sure.
On the DC Power Connect website, is Pepco also included in the retail choice options on the website, or is it just the alternate options?
Well, no, Pepco is the standard offers service provider. So their price is fixed and known. And I think there is a place where you can see the SOS rate. So this is the rate that you want to compare what the offers that you're receiving, that you come up with either on the Power Connect site or maybe from a solicitation you receive in the mail or over the phone. So there is an SOS rate that's fixed, and it doesn't really change. And then that's also on your bill as well. So you basically, it's a price to compare the Pepco SOS rate versus whatever supplier offer rate that you may come up with.
Those are the two questions that we received.
Okay. Well,
so we will also post a link for you to evaluate today's presentation.
Well, again, I thank you, and I invite you to visit the site. If you have any if you have any questions, feel free to contact the Office of Consumer Services at 202-626-5120. Again, this is something that, it takes some learning and some time to kind of be familiar and be comfortable with competitive suppliers offers, but I think it's something that everybody should look into and explore. I want to thank you again.